I am going live to YouTube. We're going, look at the most handsome, devilish man to ever walk on the screen, Sir Benjamin Jeremy Stein, Doctor Extraordinaire. I want to welcome everybody to the world according to that man, Ben Stein. I want to welcome everybody to the Saturday night special. We have a fun-packed, crowded house tonight of interesting, eclectic, and amazing-looking people. And of course, I'm referring to Ben Stein himself. But I want to thank everybody that's been in the chat. And I want to remind everybody to please keep downloading those podcasts and subscribe to Ben's email, benstein.substack.com. It's doing great, the email list, Remzo, right? And let's keep it up and let's keep it moving. We're joined tonight by the man that has the podcast On the Run with Remzo Martinez, a Batman connoisseur, Remzo the Bat. Welcome as always. It's good to see you, Remzo. We're missed.
Great to be here. I'm finally setting into the Dairyland itself. The weather isn't too crazy. I'm digging it here.
Good. A lot of cute girls in Milwaukee too.
And Ben, you're going to have to move a little closer, just because
cute girls in Milwaukee too. I said.
Yes, there are, I'm sure. But Remzo's are you engaged or are you just boyfriend?
Engaged.
Some mazel tov. Remzo's engaged. You can't look.
Mazel tov.
And we're also joined by, from the simplelifenow.com, the master of living off the grid, the off the grid master himself, Gary Collins. You look great. Welcome back as always, Gary.
We'll see how this goes. We're going through some crazy heat here that we're not accustomed to.
Some crazy. Oh,
yeah.
He's going.
Let's get 1-9, 110 3 days in a row.
You're kidding.
All records.
Wow,
no, we've never had that.
Well, maybe you'll hit 130. But of course, this show wouldn't be complete without Diet Coke connoisseur, former shoe salesman, father, grandfather, husband, son, mathematician, statistician, provocateur, but of course, economist.
Economist and lawyer. And what do I do with these hands without any surgical tools whatsoever?
Of course, Dr. Benjamin Jeremy Stein.
Does he take Medicaid?
I don't take Medicaid, and I don't take any insurance, and I don't have any patients.
You know, Remzo, that line never gets old on me. Every time you say it,
we're gonna keep asking it until the day he does.
And I want to get right into it off the bat. We are on a show where we have one person who has not gotten the vaccine, but thank God has not gotten COVID. We have one person on the show who has not gotten COVID, who's gotten COVID, but has not gotten the vaccine. And we have two people who we don't think we had COVID, but had the vaccine and had terrible side effects.
Well, I'd like to again say what I said to this afternoon, Captain, which is, if I may, sir, we don't know if they were the side effects. They might have been the main effects.
You know, and when Ben said that to me on the phone today, I thought that was an excellent point, because side effects usually, you know, it's worst case scenario for a few people. This seemed to be the case scenario, Ben Stein, for everybody that we know.
Well, I had it. Glenn, one of my nurses, had it. My wifey had it. My best friend, Judith Meyer Friedman, had it. My doctor, wonderful Dr. Skinner, said he had a number of patients who had it. I don't think it's that rare.
I agree with you. But it goes to the bigger point. I was talking with you about this before the show, Gary Collins, Remzo and Ben Stein.
Before we go any further, I was talked into wearing headphones for the show tonight, and I happily agreed, but I don't see any headphones.
Well, Jeff unplugged them for a second, but you could gladly plug in those headphones. And but I love how always smoothly, Remzo, we start. But I wanted to get into it because I was thinking to myself, Ben, before the show, as I go into stores, you still see at least 50 to 60% of people wearing masks when they don't have to, which is really shocking, especially, I don't know how it is in other states, but in the state of California, people are continually wearing masks, even though they don't have to. And I was telling Remzo and I was telling you, Ben, that Israel has had 240 new cases, which for a small little place seems a lot, but I await the next wave of, when it comes here, future lockdowns. And I really do believe that is in their cards.
I pray that as a matter of traffic control, we do have more lockdowns, because the traffic during the lockdown was great, and traffic now is just horrible. But as a matter of the public being under the control of the Bolsheviks in Washington and Sacramento, I'm very, very worried that this is what the Bolsheviks have in mind, is to use a so-called public health, so-called emergency to control us.
And I think it goes even deeper than that, because I brought up a point with Remzo that Remzo didn't think about. So I was very happy. But I brought up, which I brought up on the show before, which is, let's be, how do we say this without getting banned? The last elections were affected by masks, and every bill that the Democrats or Republicans right now, Remzo, are passing to secure voter integrity, the Democrats can't get rid of them. And so a fear that the Democrats have right now is that come the midterms, which I predicted, and I said this to you, and I've said to Ben, the Republicans will win in a landslide if people could get to the ballots.
Well, I don't think there's a question whether they can get there.
Will they be allowed to?
Too many people are going to go there. I think we have too many people going there. We have voter ID laws and voter integrity laws, which are intended to make sure that only qualified voters vote, are being attacked in the courts and attacked by the Democrat Party in a most vicious way.
Yes, but Remzo, they have been losing some of those battles, and I think it's a real threat to their form of democracy.
Remzo isn't talking. Remzo is on a hunger strike.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know.
I suppose I said Remzo 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying.
We're calling you Remzo for.
So, I mean, I understand that they might try and do that, but I don't think that would go ahead and sway the election. I don't know where you're getting your sources for this idea that Republicans are going to win by a landslide. Republicans aren't offering an alternative. Republicans aren't running on any policies that are really going to go ahead and affect everyday Americans. They talk about voter protection, but I mean, really all I've read when it comes to the federal bills that are being put out there is just strengthening existing laws. Throughout different states, such as here in Wisconsin, what they're trying to do is they're trying to put more measures in place, but really it's just veneer at this point. Republicans are running on culture war issues, which are great for their social media following, but it's not great for actual policy. Republicans aren't providing an alternative because when they had the opportunity to do that, what did we see? We saw Republican governors shut down their own communities, their own states. We saw them get really timid when it came to questioning the lab theory for the coronavirus. And when it came to Fauci, yeah, a few of them lobbed some verbal bombs at him. But ultimately, Republicans over the past year haven't done anything more than just scream stolen election. So in terms of this idea that we're going to see a wave, I really don't think people are going to come out and vote. I actually think that unlike 2018, where we saw historic voter turnout, which actually, despite the fact that Democrats took over the House, Republicans did overwhelmingly positive across the board when it came to state legislatures and governorships, even obtaining more seats in the Senate. I don't think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see low voter turnout across the board, primarily for Republicans, because if you just keep telling people that the voting system is rigged and that everything is predetermined and that nothing you can do is going to stop it, then why would they go out and vote to begin with? So it's a lack of inspiration. It's a lack of actual alternatives. And, you know, at this point, the water's full of blood and mud. It's just not like I don't see anyone excited to vote Republican.
Well, what this brings me to something that Gary and Judah and Remzo, you and I, we've all been talking about, which is if you could make up your dream Republican platform, what would it be? What would the Republican Party call for if you and I and Judah and Gary called the shots? What would we call for?
Well, I want to go to Gary because he hasn't spoken yet. But Gary, I'm looking at the polls, so I'll disagree with Remzo because normally I would have expected during this recent wave of polling, everything to be blamed on Trump. I honestly really, I mean, I'm quite shocked with border, with border policy going in, the Biden administration being in the negatives on all of these things. And that's where it becomes a local issue. That's not just, it becomes a state issue where people in the suburbs are getting scared, Gary Collins. So that's why I'm looking at as sort of a red wave without a platform. You could still have a wave. It's not like Democrats have much of a platform.
Democrats have a platform of socialism. What is our platform?
Gary?
That's what I think Remzo makes a very good point. I don't know what the Republicans' platform is. I don't. I'm confused half the time. We know the border's a mess. So border protection, obviously, and we've heard reboot the immigration system I've heard it for 30 years. No one does anything. Zero. It's pretty easy to fix. I've worked at the border. It's not complicated. It's actually pretty easy. But if they would just be fiscally responsible, protect our First, Second Amendment rights, protect the border, have a strong military, just those alone would work.
That's my point, Gary. And Ben
but they
Stein.
don't do it. The problem is they don't do it.
Well, I think Republicans have given us so far a pretty strong military. I mean, it could always be stronger, but let's face the fact we're competing with China and Russia, and there's just one of us. The British and the French don't amount to much these days. So I think considering it's just us, we're doing fairly well. Although I would certainly agree, if I were in charge of the platform, I would say the number one issue is defense. There's no doubt about it. We're not going to disappear as a nation because of gay and lesbian issues. We will disappear as a nation, God forbid, because of military weakness. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. We've easily got the money for it. Let's do it.
I think the bigger point, Gary, sorry for jumping. Gary, go ahead.
Well, what the biggest problem with that, as far as balancing the budget and a strong military go hand in hand. Here's why. The military industrial complex has been completely out of control for decades. We blow and piss away more money to make billionaires and millionaires who are contractors, defense owners, and then Congress. Hey, just look at what Dianne Feinstein, she just listed her Lake Tahoe house for $41 million, the most expensive house listed in the country. That's what? What?
In the county.
And guess,
wait a minute, Gary, is she a defense contractor? I did not know that.
No, but she has worked hand in hand with defense contractors in California because that's where a lot of them are, Southern California. And she's been on all the intelligence committees for how long? Of course. I
think her husband is a wealthy real estate entrepreneur, and that's where that money comes from.
Well, the better question, Ben, would be then, what was that guy's name from Las Vegas? The Harry Black-Eyed Reed. He walked out of there worth about 60 to 80 million dollars, walking into the Senate with absolutely, he couldn't rub two nickels together. So there obviously, to Gary's point, there obviously is a certain amount of corruption. But the better question, you're right, you're asking is, Remzo brought it up, is what is the Republicans' platform?
Well, we keep bringing, keep bringing it up too. We all keep bringing it up. So maybe we have four of us swinging dicks here tonight. Why don't we think about it? Strong defense, strong Second Amendment, absolutely ironclad First Amendment. None of this nonsense about taking away the First Amendment rights and making sure the First Amendment protections extend to the internet. That's a pretty strong beginning.
I'd say, if we're gonna work in the realm of theory, let's go further. Abolish the FDA. Abolish the Department of Education.
That is a good one. That's a really good one. That's good.
I mean, you start with those two things. State level.
Yeah, they can all be run at the state and local level. You don't need those. I worked in the FDA. Trust me, we don't really need it. It doesn't do much. But
go on,
I'll go a step further. I'll add a third one. I'll say abolish the Department of Homeland Security.
Oh,
so I'll go for those three.
Who's going to screw us over at the airports?
Somebody else, but not the TSA.
Okay, so Ben, he actually brings up a great point. We'll get back into it after the break because we discussed this. We discussed this a couple weeks back when Sir Sue-A-Lot, Larry Klayman was on. But Remzo, please tell people where they could find us.
If you don't know how to use Al Gore's amazing internet, then I can't help you. But there's some easy solutions. Go on your phone, go to the podcast app, and subscribe to The World According to Ben Stein, wherever you can find the show. And if you're watching here, that bell icon, it's not going to go ahead and ring itself. Go ahead and click on it so you get a notification.
That's good, Remzo. That's good.
Whenever we go ahead and upload new content. And if you need more Ben Stein in your life, we make it so easy. benstein.substack.com. That's benstein.substack.com.
And tell people about the new, and please tell people about the new feature we added, Remzo, the YouTube, the little Ben shorts, which Gary Collins absolutely loved on YouTube. So it's about 1.5 minute, 2-minute clips that Ben's friend Mike Visser in Canada takes from the show. We usually put it up.
Wonderful. Mike Visser is a genius cinematographer and televisionographer.
100%. And if you just tuned in, welcome back to The World According to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. And we're discussing
Not
the Republic.
that man. I'm that man. He's Batman.
I don't. Okay, what does that make Gary?
Wait, what are you drinking there, Remzo? We don't have drinking on the show.
It's colored water.
It's the tint. But Ben, we were discussing Remzo. Actually, really, you do bring up a good point. I'll disagree with you on the last on certain points, but you do bring up a great point. And I do believe if Republicans, Ben Stein, we've discussed this, came out and said we really need to, sadly that building collapse in Florida.
That's terrible.
It's a terrible situation. But it's a building that was 40 years old, that was past inspection. They're saying there was an inspector on the roof that day. I really do believe if
an inspector on the roof
that day, before 2 hours before it imploded, and 2 years before they had written reports. But if you listen to that, it sort of vaguely sounds like what we need to do with the government bureaucracies like the CIA, the FBI, the FTC, all these different organizations.
Don't say anything bad about the FTC.
We really do need to start auditing. And we're talking about a platform that Republicans or conservatives could run on, would be to audit these agencies, to really break it down and get them back to where they need to be.
The FTC.
Forget about the FTC, but the FBI, the CIA.
We work real hard.
Forget about the FTC because you used to work for them. So any agency Ben Stein didn't work for, I think a strong Republican platform could be to do it to really do investigations on them.
Well, Judah, you have one major flaw in there. You just named the two agencies who are deepest in the deep state.
Yes.
Anyone who runs on that platform has zero chance of surviving. And if they do survive, they will end up with child porn on their computer magically and end up in prison.
And drugs in their car.
With a dead prostitute.
But Ben, that really can be a platform conservatives run on. It's a populist idea. We know what got Trump nominated was populism. Populism in America is not dead. It's a very and I really do believe if they start to break away from the swamp, as people call it, that's a strong platform to start to dive on.
I love the idea of defund the bureaucracy. Defund the bureaucracy.
I like that.
I mean, there's this wonderful joke, and I'm sure everyone on this panel has heard it. I apologize for telling it to you again. But Ronald Reagan said when he was running for president, he came upon a man from the Bureau of Indian Affairs sobbing. And Reagan said to him, "Why are you crying?" And the man said, "My Indian died." Well, of course, we don't want anyone to die. But obviously, there's way too much bureaucracy relative to the business of the country. And you, by the way, I don't know how many times you out there in the viewing audience or you here on the set go to Washington, D.C., but I, your humble servant, still have a little tiny bit of property there. And I go there fairly often. And you cannot imagine how that city has grown. You cannot imagine how huge it is. All bureaucrats everywhere. It's like they're growing bureaucrats under a heat lamp. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
I
didn't know there was that many villages for village idiots. Man, how
well, they build up.
They're not idiots. Hey, my dear friend, they're not idiots. They get good pay. They get incredibly good benefits. They work in nice air-conditioned buildings. It's not, sorry, it's not that bad a life. I sort of sometimes regret that I came to Hollywood, became a movie star instead of staying in Washington and being a bureaucrat.
Remzo, he actually raises a great slogan, which is defund the bureaucracy. And that is something, if you're asking conservatives of something to run on, that would be something to run on. I want to give you an example. There's that town, it's Maryland. It's Baltimore, Maryland, where the taxpayers, the store owners are threatening to stop paying taxes. They've sent tons of letters in, and these people, these business owners, these small business owners, who are their areas are being rampaged with violence, are actually considering doing that.
And I commend them, because I've been saying that for over 6 months. I think the only way you're going to see an actual change in how we do things from the right coming for once is going to have to come through a tax revolt.
The Lenin, our good friend Vladimir Lenin, no relation to John Lennon, who was good too, said, expropriate the expropriators. Defund the defunders.
That's brilliantly said, and I can't believe it's Gary. I want to bring the.
You know what they should do? If I agree, I 100% agree with the tax revolt. What they should do on the flip side, though, is also hire their own security firm and bring in their own security and start thumping heads and start cracking skulls in there, because some of this shit that I see on camera is completely off the charts of humanity.
The biggest problem, Gary, you're right, but the biggest problem, private communities can do that. So the Jewish community in Los Angeles has hired recently a bunch of IDF soldiers to protect the community.
I did not know that. Wait a minute, I'm part of the.
Man, that's hardcore.
Yeah,
that is hardcore. I like it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of.
Them.
So that's the whole point. If you ever, Israel was using air marshals before people knew what air marshals were.
Absolutely.
And but my point, the bigger point, Gary, is these people have just come out of a massive slump, obviously, because of the COVID. They don't have a lot of extra money to hire these services. I mean, it's a huge task you're asking.
No. I'll bet you they could find volunteers.
That's actually an interesting. So we're all talking about stuff right now that is really important. That conservatives.
Volunteers to America. Look what's coming down the street. Got the revolution.
You're probably right. There are probably retired police officers in those areas that have lived in those areas that want to see them protected.
And law enforcement.
And Ben Stein, it's really funny to me. The irony in all of this is that if this would have been heretic talk for people like us 10 years ago or 5 years ago, this would be pure heresy. But this is heresy. This is where we are right now.
Well, we've seen a lot of disappointment. I hate to say this, but we've seen so many Republicans who promised that they were going to really change things around and change things over. And as you have so often said, Judah, they didn't really do that much. Of course, it's very hard when you've got the media against you all the time. Nevertheless, I'm reading a wonderful book called The President and the Apprentice about Dwight Eisenhower when Dick Nixon was his vice president. Media very, very much against Eisenhower and Nixon. They still managed to get a great deal done because Eisenhower, by virtue of having been Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, had so much moral clout that he could get things done. And I'd like to see the Republicans find some leader who has so much moral clout that he can get things done. I don't know who that would be, but there must be somebody who does.
Well, I mean, sorry.
What does Ben might want to ask you? What do you think of? Oh gosh, mine went blank there. Was it DeSantis or DeSantis? Whatever that.
DeSantis.
I love DeSantis. I think he's great. I hope he is not blamed for this condo falling down, because I certainly cannot imagine what he as an individual or even as governor
has nothing to do with
keep it from falling down. But
you know how the media is, Gary. They could play the story any which way they can. That DeSantis should have been inspecting every single building himself. It's his job as the governor to do that. But DeSantis is good, and I love DeSantis actually. And there are a lot of conservatives real conservatives that I actually really do like. The question we always have to ask ourselves is, could they cross that blue line? That's the question that's always, can they cross, could they get Wisconsin? Could they get those blue, the purplish states?
Yeah.
Do they have that sex appeal to get that type of thing? And with DeSantis, I'm not 100% sure.
Well, who has that sex appeal besides me?
Well, obviously, Trump had it, but he will be, a certain age when the next go around of elections happens, and I wouldn't blame him if he ran great. If he didn't, I wouldn't blame him at all for what he was put through. But Remzo, I think these are all, you rose a great point of all things that in my wildest dreams I never thought would be on the conservative ticket.
Well, I mean, these aren't even my ideas. And if anything, I'm just stealing everything from Ron Paul 2008 and Ron Paul 2012. He was asked during several Fox debates when he kept bringing up all the agencies he would abolish if he were elected president, what he would replace them with. And he said absolutely nothing. And when we look at people who mobilized the youth vote in terms of Republican candidates, it's only really been two since Ronald Reagan. It's been Ron Paul during the 2008 and 2012 primaries, and it was Donald Trump during the 2016 general election, not even the primary. They did that because they had radical candor and they weren't willing to go. I'm sorry. And they were not going to just go ahead and appease the establishment GOP. They weren't going to go ahead and kowtow to the media. It was one of those things where it's like, this is what I believe and this is how I'm going to do it. That's why, the Democrats understand it. Bernie Sanders, when they hadn't accomplished that. AOC, when they hadn't accomplished that. They do this each and every time. And we haven't had a Ron Paul since. We're probably not even going to see, Trump in, the literal terms or in a figurative term come this go around, because everyone's like, we need to go back to, being cooperative with the other side.
No. The swamp, Remzo, is saying that. The base is the furthest thing in the world from saying that, Gary. Most people do not want to go back to status quo. Most people in the conservative base or the Trump base, Gary, are not Mitch McConnell fans at this point.
Well, it's interesting this go around because people realize that elections do have consequences. We are in an utter shitstorm. This is an embarrassment at this point. And for us, the thing I'm worried about, people like me, I know my group's more.
Okay, I just want to say something, Gary, before you finish, because I want you to finish this. To the people listening, Gary Collins served this country for over 20 years. He's not a Republican. He's not a Democrat. He calls it straight through the middle. So when Gary Collins is saying, there's a person that's saying we're in a complete shitstorm, he's not saying it on a partisan line by any metrics.
No,
go ahead, Gary.
No. And what I'm seeing with people like me, though, who are more middle of the road, more libertarian mindset, even though the Libertarian Party, I don't even know what to think of that, is a lot of us are pretty demoralized because we don't see either side solving the problems. And a lot of us are going, you know what? I'm just going to live my life. I'm going to hunker down, do what I need to do, love my children, love my family, and move on. That's what I'm seeing with my group. And that scares me because I haven't voted because I don't believe in voting for these clowns. I'm tired of voting for the less clown. That's what I'm tired of.
Ben has a question.
I'd like to ask, if I may respectfully ask, one, what you say, none of these people happens to be solving the problem. What is the problem? That's one. And two, what is the shitstorm? What is the shitstorm? To me, these things are the deprivation of free speech above all. But what do you see it? What do you see the number one problem as being?
Well, it's an undermining of our freedoms, of our individual freedoms. They're attacking at the heart of what America is based upon, and that is freedom of the individual to pursue your own happiness and your own path in life in this glorious country. They're undercutting that. And that's the problem. A lot of us are like, well, you know what? I've had it. I vote. I pay my taxes. I go to work every day. I raise good kids, and I get shit on every time I turn the corner by both parties. And I think that's the problem is people don't know what the solution is to the problem. And the problem is a corrupt, utter out of control government.
Gary, what do you mean specifically when you say they shit on you when you go around the corner? What are they doing to you?
Well, they pick your pocket. The Republicans always say they won't tax the middle class, but they always tax the middle class. Read my lips, no new taxes. Boom, here we go, new taxes. Not only that, but they spend like drunken sailors. They always say we're conservative, we're for a balanced budget. When was the last time a Republican president had a balanced budget, for God's sake?
1969.
I wasn't even alive, and I'm in my 50s. Give me a break.
You were not alive in 1969?
I may have been a spermatozoa.
None of us on this board, none of us on this panel were alive in 1969, one of the greatest years. One of the greatest years in American history. And Ben, you do raise great points. I just want to say before we do a reset, but Ben and I were driving back yesterday or to Malibu, and which is just a stunning drive. And if you, as we passed, what is it? What building is that, Ben? The federal building, the state.
That's in Westwood. That's the federal building.
The federal building, but Gary, it is a horrific sight for anybody to see.
Oh, no. Oh, you're talking about the
Veterans Affairs building. Yes.
That's the most horrible, scary sight ever.
Where you see
there's all homeless people.
Yeah. It's literally like 1,000 tents at least with American flags hanging on the tents. It is,
they're homeless people.
Yeah. It's demoralizing. It's a horrific sight and it's frightening. And Ben, as we were driving back, you get an even bigger view of, because there are two sets of people, one on the outskirts past the gates, and then there's a whole encampment inside. And it's shocking that
it's terrifying.
It's terrifying that, we constantly talk about the homeless epidemic. I really think that would be something a conservative that should really be on the conservative ticket, is solving the homeless.
Well, let me ask you a question. Since you're a smart guy, we have a very, very smart guy sitting just under you with a very nice aqua-colored shirt on, scratching his nose, which is a good conservative secret gesture. What would we do? What do we do about the homeless people?
I think number one, we have to fight the ACLU and fight back about getting these people help, because a huge reason we can't get the homeless off the street is because it's against the law to kick them out. And if you watch,
they don't want to go out.
Yeah, some of them don't, and they're finding it's growing that a large proportion of them do not want to not be homeless.
A massive part of them don't want to, but on the other hand, we don't have the Ben legally to get rid of them off these premises.
What would we do when we get rid of them?
Sorry, Gary.
Where do we put them? They've proven every time they build housing for the homeless, it costs $225,000 to $250,000 per person, because everyone gets in on the drunk fest and starts embezzling every fund they can get their hands on both sides.
That's we should send them to Mexico. Yeah, no, I mean that. That's not a joke.
Well, no, because that's what Mexico, Central and South America does to us. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what they do to us.
I think we should play the game that's being played.
Yeah, 100%.
No, I'm dead serious. I would vote for a Republican that said, I'm going to take these people who are willingly homeless and I'm going to send them to Mexico. And then people are going to be like, how?
Mexicans and he's going to send them right back to us.
Back. They might like Mexico more. We don't know that. I think it's worth a good college try.
Hey, we'll start the homeless exchange program.
I told you that's what years ago. That's what made Rush Limbaugh.
I have a question about this. And I grew up. I was born and raised in a border town in Arizona. I've lived in the Southwest almost my entire life before I moved to Virginia, God's country. I've very rarely seen a homeless Mexican in my life because they work. They come here with a few dollars stitched into their underwear, speaking no English, and they immediately start working by standing outside in front of Home Depot and libraries. I would rather have 1 million Mexicans than 1 million Americans who are just collecting welfare and who in some cases, and I know this will be the thing that will probably get us removed from YouTube, are willingly homeless. I think that homelessness in this country is a choice. And if you're going to choose to do that, you might as well take the consequences. We should send you to Mexico.
It's called Remzo, you bring up a great point. It's Ben Stein. It's called an exchange program, right? We do that with students. We could do that with the homeless population.
Jorge is going to Tile, and you're going to Tijuana.
Sorry, Ben.
I don't see what the solution is. And I ask,
send them to Mexico.
Where the hell did all these homeless people come from? I mean,
okay, so you brought this up before. To answer your question, Ben, you raised the point of bureaucrats, right? How do they, it's like a heat lamp. It's drugs, it's alcohol. The great leftist lie, one of the many of them, has been it's about people losing their jobs and they can't afford to live. And for people like that don't have families, and I always say there, but for the grace of God go I, because I've been blessed in my life. But Ben, for the most part, they're drug addicts, they're alcoholics, they're people that have severe mental issues. So
So what do we do with them? I mean, there are people that have severe mental issues. We can't make all of them vice president of the United States. So what do we do?
Bring back the asylums. We spoke about this a few months ago. That one of the worst things that we did to the group of Americans that just really cannot take care of themselves is we closed down the asylums, because the media and the entertainment industry went around saying that they're being tortured and experimented on as if it was the turn of the 20th century, when in fact many of these people who were released from the hospitals became homeless, became abused, died in some cases. You know, I brought up how I filmed several documentaries, a few different abandoned insane asylums. They're now owned by former patients, by former inmates. And what they say is that, you know, for a lot of people, this was the best shot at living a life with dignity. I say we bring them back and then send the others to Mexico.
I don't know if I disagree with you, Remzo. I firmly believe you give them a choice. You go, you cannot be homeless, so you have a choice. You either get off the street yourself, or we're going to put you into our house. I don't call it asylum, but put them into housing. But again,
we'll call it the hospital.
Yeah,
Ben,
exactly.
Ben, they raise a great point.
Well, there used to be laws in this country against vagrancy. And the vagrancy laws said that if you have people who are just standing around, not doing anything, drinking and smoking and taking drugs and not working, they can be imprisoned for that. And then the ACLU and the Supreme Court said, no, that's a violation of people's freedom. We can't do that. So now maybe it's time to bring back the vagrancy laws, but I don't think the court is going to let us. But vagrancy laws might be a good step in the right direction.
And Remzo, I agree with you 100%. And Remzo, you have a huge fan in the chat. His name is Peter O. He's just agreeing with you down the line. Vote Remzo. But on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. And this is actually a really fascinating and interesting discussion. And it's really, as wifey would say, it's heart-rendering, because we don't see the solutions.
There are no solutions. There are no solutions. There are no solutions.
Send the homeless to Mexico. That's a solution.
That is not a solution.
Why not?
Because they'll find their way back.
Mexico is a sovereign country. They can round them up and send them back.
But on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to World According to Ben Stein, and we get your point, Remzo. We're not. It's the.
I'm not even joking.
I know.
100% mean.
Remzo, look, in front of the VA hospital on San Vicente Boulevard, there are probably 300 or 400 homeless people. You round them up, put them in a whole bunch of buses, drive them down to the homeless to the border between San Diego and Mexico. You let them out. Say thanks very much, hasta mañana, and then they come right back. What do?
You build the wall. Oh yeah, what happened to that? Where's the wall?
You know what I say to that, Remzo? All in all, you're just another brick in the wall.
We never quote Pink Floyd, that anti-Semite Nazi, on this show.
Really, what's Mexico gonna do? What are they? What is Mexico?
Well, right now with this regime, anything they want, but.
I know what they're going to do. Yes. They're going to round them up, jam their butts full of heroin, and ship them right back over. I think they'll do.
Right. They'll put them in the tents. And on that note, if you just.
So what you're telling me is we helped create a jobs program with Mexico to help our homeless problem?
Well, and we need our heroin.
I don't know what we do, but I like the word jobs means a lot. And I don't see why we do not take the homeless who are not physically unfit and have them working, cleaning up the streets. I mean,
because you brought it up, it's against the law.
I would say, like most of these people.
Hold on, Remzo. Hold on.
Go ahead.
I blessed for the moment. I'm sure it'll stop very soon. To have a home in Malibu. It's a beautiful area. The views are almost unbelievable. If you drive down the street, Pacific Coast Highway, you see a lot of trash, a really lot of trash. Why don't we make the homeless pick that up, clean that up?
Because the ACLU would not allow that. And
okay, then they're not going to allow anything.
You're right. And that's where we're in this. And that's a huge, massive reason why we're in this mess in the first place. I agree with Gary. We build lockdown asylums and you treat them with dignity. You treat them with respect. And you try to offer them as much help as possible. If they're getting better, you release them into society. But until I don't see any other solution, and I'm not trying to sound mean. None of us are trying to sound crass or mean. We're trying to figure out a solution. But Remzo, please tell people where they could find us.
If you really want to send the homeless to Mexico, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Google, Stitcher Play, wherever you can find us online. And if you really don't want to send them to Mexico, don't do that. But you know what you want to do. Leave us a 5-star review and send the homeless to Mexico.
I want to welcome everybody back to the world according to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. And you've been asking great questions tonight, sir. So I will let you go for it. Ask the next great question, Ben Stein.
Why don't we go to the Supreme Court and say to the Supreme Court, we're going to send you to Mexico unless you let us make the homeless clean the streets?
Ben, why don't we just send everyone in Congress to Mexico?
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
You see, we're going to have so many unemployed bureaucrats because we defunded the bureaucracy. You're going to have to go sling dope.
No, you actually raise a great point. So here is a decent solution, right? So
deport DC.
Oh, no, that's exactly what I was about to say. DC, we make DC part of Mexico.
Here's a problem.
I don't think. Okay, wait a second. Gary has a problem. Solution.
Here's the problem. Most people in Congress are so stupid. We'd end up with a bunch of them in New Mexico because they wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Okay, I say we lace the city of Washington D.C. with mass amounts of propofol, and we fly them overnight. We send a bunch of charter buses. And when they wake up in a different country, we say we have a border. But yes, I mean,
that'll help a lot. I'm glad you brought that up. Look, I don't think there's ever. Here's my question for you. I'm 76 years old. That's old. Let's not get ourselves. That's old.
It's not old. I don't remember. It's older.
Yeah, thank you. I don't remember seeing these homeless people on the streets of Washington, D.C. when I grew up in Washington, D.C. Where were they? Why weren't they out on the streets of Washington, D.C. when I was a child?
Because they were in the asylums.
Exactly right. There used to, very right, Remso. Very good. There used to be a very famous mental hospital in Washington called St. Elizabeth's. Very, very famous mental hospital. In fact, the great anti-Semite, but still great poet, Ezra Pound, was for a long time a patient at St. Elizabeth's. And many, many people who are distinguished, intelligent people, but insane, were put at St. Elizabeth's. Yes, let's open up mental hospitals in a big way. The idea that we were going to solve our mental illness problems without mental hospitals was never a good idea. It was an idea of Nelson Rockefeller. He had some damn cute girlfriends. He had all the money in the world, but he did not have a good idea about how to deal with mentally ill people.
Okay, so here's two things, right? So Ben Stein, we know for sure, and I want to get everybody in this. So we know two things for sure. We know a majority of them are either addicted to either alcohol or other substances. Why should it not be the job of the beverage companies, the alcohol makers in our country, to why should they not be a little bit? We keep on seeing lawsuits against the opioid companies and every Johnson & Johnson and all these different companies paying trillions of dollars or billions of dollars in settlements. Why is the alcohol industry, and if they want to say, I say the same thing with weed, Ben, If you want to make this legal, and I spoke to Gary on the phone about this, then for every dispensary, for every liquor store, there should be a mental health facility next door, Ben Stein.
Absolutely great idea. Totally great idea. There's no reason whatsoever that the people who benefit enormously from selling addiction and misery should not pay something. I mean, reparations, hell yes, reparations from the alcohol and drug companies to the people who were ruined by their alcohol and their drugs. Absolutely reparations for sure.
And more than reparations, Ben, what would it cost them to set up facilities? I mean, my God, these companies are making money hand over shot glass, and it would look great. It would be great public relations that you're building up these drug and alcohol centers, Remzo, these mental institutions. That's real accountability.
No. I disagree with that. How about we start doing what the ACLU wanted to do, and each time somebody is killed by a Winchester weapon, Winchester has to go ahead and pay out the family, or Smith & Wesson. Like, if we start doing it there, we're going to have to start doing it with a lot of things. It's like, I should go ahead and, sue Toyota, because in 2016, when I was in a car accident, I was hit by a driver driving a Toyota. So why not, sue Toyota? If we're going to do that, that's going to cause a lot more problems. And at the end of the day, nobody made you do drugs. Nobody made you do those things. There's enough people out there.
Remzo, it's not a matter of making. It's a matter of that people have the problem. We have a problem, and we have to figure out a solution. These are companies. I'm not saying, obviously, you're right. There's a million different things you could say. If a bunch of drivers are bad, then the car companies and they should give. We're talking about, though, an epidemic of homelessness in our country. We're talking about a crisis of conscience of conscience.
And I think that generally homelessness is a choice.
As a person that's sober, you're right. I believe you. I agree with you in the Portland area and in the Seattle area. Where
is that where Remzo is? Or you
no. Where the teen homeless epidemic is massive, Remzo. I do agree with you on that a million times over. But as I drive by these parks, I don't necessarily. You could be right, Remzo. I'm not going to say it's.
Domino's Pizza is willing to give you $500 cash to work $14.50 an hour in most places to deliver pizzas. If you're homeless, that's a choice.
Sure, with
having facilities with you, that's a choice.
These people are not right in the head. They're not able to make rational decisions. They're not Milton Friedman, Adam Smith, Frank Knight type of economics thinking people. They're crazy.
Yeah, Gary. So there's two things to this, right? So you teach people how to live their authentic selves, but if somebody's cocked out of their brains, they can't live their authentic selves. And there's nothing you'd be able to do how to teach them to live off the grid. They need to get mentally healthy first. That's what we're talking about, is mental health. Oh, what was that thing? Exactly. 23%. And I sent this to Ben yesterday. Where was it? Michigan or Arizona or whatever state?
Michigan.
23% of adolescents last year thought about suicide.
That's
insane. That's absolutely insane. And
that's why do you think that's insane? I think it's perfectly sane. I mean, to be or not to be, that is the question. That is what William Shakespeare said was the main question of human existence. Why is it surprising that people think about it?
Well, no, I'm just shocked that we've come to this point. And the problem with the homeless is you have two things that you have to solve. And I agree with Remzo to a point. I would rather have the government say, hey, we're going to fix these programs. That's got to be local, because I don't like the federal government to get involved in it and say, we're going to put in this much money, and they go to Anheuser-Busch. They go to whatever their state pot division is, whatever. And they go, hey, we're going to start these programs up. We'd really appreciate it, wink, wink, if you guys would match some funds with us to help take care of this problem, because I don't like anyone being forced to do something with a barrel pointed at their face. They should be voluntarily doing this because it's the right thing to do. And that's where I get pissed off is all these companies make hands over fist but they don't. They go, oh, so what? Yeah, we got a bunch of alcohol out there. We make a ton of money, but just keep drinking. Just keep drinking.
Right. The idea that
yeah,
Gary,
an ethical CEO would
guy.
go, we need to help fix this problem. That's what an
Gary,
ethical CEO would do.
You are a wonderful, wonderful human being to think, an incredibly optimistic human being to think that the alcohol companies would, on their own hook, without any kind of government compulsion, step up and shell out hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars.
Oh, they won't.
Yeah, I don't think Gary was being, I think Gary was sort of saying that.
I was saying if you were a moral human being,
I know
that's what you would do. But we know, yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yes,
I think, I think if we're going back to conservative policy, there was a policy brought out, I think in 2000. I don't think it was Steve Forbes. I think it may have been somebody else, but a system of tax and credit where basically if you owe X amount of dollars to the federal government, if you go ahead and instead say, I'm going to go ahead and donate that to a 501c3 nonprofit, that's money that you can reallocate otherwise. That goes back to the communities that are directly going ahead and impacting people's lives properly. And that way, it's not just going to get burned in the bureaucracy. If I say, if I owe X amount of dollars to the federal government and they're giving me an option where I can go ahead and give it to a tax verified nonprofit of my choice, where's the money going to best be allocated? To a charity that's actually going out and impacting people and they have to go through way more checks and balances than most federal agencies do? Or am I going to just toss it to the feds?
By the way, I just want, if you don't mind.
You're very optimistic about the human character.
I just want to bring up a couple of things. This is where the people are bringing up in chat. We're not referring to poor people. We're referring to mentally ill people. We as a society do believe, and all of us here believe, that the poor people in our country, that there should be a social safety net. Everybody here agrees with that. I know Ben Stein agrees with that.
A social safety net is a job.
Yes, or the
That's
ability,
a good point, Remzo.
or Remzo, to the ability to get that. And there's some amazing programs out there for people that offer clothing for people to go to job interviews, that teach people how to go to those job interviews. I one time heard years ago a woman say that ran one of these charities. People always say to people, pick yourself up by the bootstraps. What if you don't have boots? And I thought it was one of the most brilliant things I had ever heard a person say. But Ben Stein, getting back to it, I think, we're talking about conservatives have to get back on the side. They did in a sense with Trump, but they have to get back on the side of empathy, which is something we talk about a lot. And you don't have to bring God into the equation too. Just being social, you could turn it on the left, as they're so focused on their asinine social issues of wokeness and cancel culture and all their issues. And we turn it on them, Ben, and we say, we want to fix these solutions. We don't know how, but get honest about it.
Well, they don't care about that, Judah. They don't care about that. The people who founded BLM did it to make money.
No, Ben. I'm referring to, you're asking.
They don't care about the moral rights.
What I'm saying is conservative candidates that are running really have to get on the empathetic, on the empathy bus of what's going on, and work on solutions. And I really think I really think when you come from a place of love, and I know we're all Pollyannish a little bit tonight, maybe, or Gary and I at least are, that people are responsive to that. And if you had candidates that were running on empathy, you might get a lot of young people.
I agree. I agree. And my whole life is based on empathy. That's why even though I have all these incredible number of houses and luxurious lifestyle choices, I'm going to be broke soon because I have too much empathy. So I very much understand empathy.
Then let's go after the number one victimizer of the average American individual. Let's abolish the IRS.
Well, who's going to pay for the government?
No one.
Keep coming back to.
Well, Remzo doesn't believe there should be presidents. Remzo believes in one big Coca-Cola ad for the world.
I think McDonald's could save America. I think if you let McDonald's in charge of Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago, any other city that's just completely run to the ground, infested with crime and rats. Have you ever seen a rat in the McDonald's? Because I haven't. And I've been to a lot. But I see them all over Milwaukee. I see them all over Baltimore when I was there. I saw them in D.C. I once saw in front of the gas station right next to the Watergate Hotel a giant rat drag us. Okay, so you should call pest control to check it, because I saw that gas station right behind the Watergate Hotel. I saw a giant rat with its teeth in a Subway sandwich drag it across the street.
Okay,
that
on
the
that,
size of a child. You let McDonald's run the cities, and you won't have these problems. That's what I've been saying. And while we're on these things, this sounds crazy, but I absolutely believe it. You sell Puerto Rico to Marriott, McDonald's, Amazon, call it McDonald's Island, Amazon Island, or something like this. And then you use the money to clear the debt.
It's a brilliant point, Remzo.
Keep coming back, Remzo.
Ben, as we're running out of time, you brought up a year, and I just want to do a little quickly, because none of us were around that year. And yesterday, you and I were both singing the Bryan Adams song, Summer of 69. What was the summer of 69 like for those of us that didn't experience it? I'm really curious.
Well,
or the year.
I had just gotten married the June before that to my big wifey, Alex, the world's most beautiful woman, and world's smartest and saintliest and most empathetic and kind and lovely and wonderful. I was about to become a third-year student at Yale Law School. We were having a time of our lives. You cannot imagine how much fun we were having. We were showing all kinds of great movies at the Yale Law School Film Society. We had so much fun. It was absolutely unbelievable.
But I'm also referring to the moon. I'm referring to I'm referring to all the things in 1969. It was an amazing year. What year? Am I getting the years wrong here?
You mean flying men on the moon?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I was 69. It was great. It was great. I remember I was visiting. I was with my wifey, and she was visiting one of her roommates from Vassar College, and there it was, right on TV, and a gentleman was sitting in his rec room watching on TV. It was an amazing sight. I could hardly believe my eyes.
And the reason I asked that, and I'll ask you all that, is Remzo, you're 20 some odd, Gary's whatever, and I'm whatever. Do you remember? I mean, do we have that in our lifetimes?
Have what? You mean a big giant scientific breakthrough?
So, yeah. Have we had something where we all stared at the TV and said, "Oh my God, that's
the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League"?
No, I would say the idea that Joe Biden could be president of the United States is so incredible that it's on a par with man landing on the moon.
Oh no, I know what it is.
I love that, Ben.
It was when Jeffrey Epstein died. And everyone collectively were like, that guy didn't kill himself. That was the one time, well, that or maybe Tiger King on Netflix. That was the one time everyone just stopped and we all just looked at the TV and we were like, we've been making fun of that guy, suiciding himself for like months now. And now he's dead. That was the only time.
Yeah.
That was the only time. And by the way, I was talking about the abuse of the IRS and everything else, and tie it all together. John McAfee died as a political prisoner in a Spanish prison. Trying to keep your money should not come with a threat of a lifetime in prison. That's all I gotta say.
He did some great work. He did the virus protection for my computer. He did great work.
He did great work, and obviously Gary couldn't think of anything that. But I'm just looking. You look back at the year 1969, Ben.
We had a great time. I was married. You can't. My wife looks great now. You cannot imagine how great she looked in 1969. Wasn't
the World's Fair that year too, or am I mistaken?
I don't remember if it was or not, to tell you.
We're of a generation that we can't look at the television, Ben, and dream. And I really think we need to build our own dreams, as you would say, and we need to build our own exceptionalism. And I know Gary and Remzo and all of us have had these ideas tonight, but that's how you get to those places is you dream big, you think of exceptionalism. And this country was and still is and has the ability to be exceptional. We just have to stop listening to the crazies that are telling us, the Bolsheviks who are trying to sell us on that it's not. And on that note, I want to thank everybody that's been listening tonight. I want to thank everybody that's been watching. Remzo, please, where can people find you, Remzo?
You can find me across everything. Oh, I completely forgot what I was going to say. I had a joke involved, but after everything else I said, it just doesn't sound as funny. Go ahead and subscribe to my show, On the Run. It's On the Run with Remzo W. Martinez, everywhere podcasts are available.
Perfectly said, Gary Collins, simplelifenow.com. Tell us something that people could learn from your site quickly.
How to be self-reliant and stop blaming other people for your problems.
Ain't that America? And you could find Ben Stein, spectator.org. Of course, you could find them on Newsmax. And of course, you could find them at The World According to Ben Stein. And please, if you get a chance, go to spectator.org, read Ben's daily diaries. But if you can throw a few nickels or shekels their way, they could always use it. It is an amazing periodical that Ben has been writing for ages. Ben, take us out.
On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. Then I'll cling to the old rugged cross till my body's trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to that old rugged cross and exchange it one day for a crown. And God bless America.
God bless you all. God bless America. We will see you Tuesday night. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend.